I'm hitting you with one off the top. The Japanese League is coming to Football Manager. FM. That was cool. I need to add that to my daily life. Is this how you get into anime? The Football Manager has begun the long process of releasing its new features, and it's done this in some catchy tweets. The Japanese one, even the J-League account got involved. Ooh. Fortunately, behind these catchy tweets, there's some actual cold, hard blogs. Because when reading about the new features in a game that's almost exclusively reading spreadsheets in tiny detail, I want as many grainy details as possible, and that's what they have given us. What's crazy to me is some of the best stuff wasn't even in the big public announcements. It's hidden on like page 27 of this. But there are two separate announcements to get to. This is the first one: smarter transfers, squad building, and finance. Now you're looking at that and you're thinking, oh, sick. And then you read the first headline and then you're not thinking that anymore. Brace for more transfer battles. So like the transfer market in FM23 sucked. It was not good. You couldn't unload players very comfortably, especially players that were on high wages. So not only this announcement, but the next announcement have to do with a ton of changes around transfers. It could have started with a nicer note. But rather interestingly, if you look beneath the title, if you look beneath the potential pain and fear of more transfer battles, the first three paragraphs talk nothing about that. Instead, they talk about the fact that AI managers are going to be much more intelligent in their transfer approach, and that is one of the main emphases of FM24. AI managers are now programmed to consider factors like form and reputation more so than ever before. Now, this is huge for me because I had a particular striker named Christian Spazzato on my Twitch save last year, this year. But despite the fact that he scored over 20 goals in the Premier League and was a regular player in a team that won the Champions League and eventually the Premier League as well, he would never be valued over 60 million because, well, his current ability wasn't actually that high. That's obviously relative, but he was still producing at a super high level and he'd won all these big awards, so I knew he should have been worth more money. And once I carry my save file over to FM24, he will be worth more money. Hot damn. Oh yeah, if you missed that giant blog that we talked about for months on end leading up to FM24, you can transfer your saves from FM23 to FM24. So if you want to play for 100 years, now you can do it in a new game. No touching grass required. But that huge announcement was a different video and a different time. It is worth mentioning that this is the last Football Manager before FM transfers to the Unity engine. Get it? Transfers. That's going to happen in FM25, which means FM24 is a magnum opus to the old way Football Manager looked and worked. Which means, honestly, I was hoping they would just clean up the things that sucked about FM23, and this is a thing that sucked about FM23. So we're off to a hot start. What does this AI Manager thing mean? Well, they're now better geared up to recognize imbalances in their squad makeup, and they'll take tactical style into consideration much more when shortlisting players. To which my response is, the AI shortlists players? They're going to look to fill attribute gaps in the squad, which is just a sentence that gets me going in the morning. But the way this works, as they point out, is that if you have a manager that likes to gegenpress, that's the American pronunciation, then you want midfielders with high stamina and work rate. If you're going to play really direct, you want a ton of speed or a ton of size and so on and so forth. But it's not just painfully obvious things that are going to be corrected in the AI. It's also more player-like things. Specifically, a stronger focus on a player's potential ability rather than their current ability. Now, they say players here, but they're talking about AI managers. When they're looking for backup rotation options to an established first-team starter, they're going to be looking for more wonder kids. So you and me and everybody, all those other wonder kid hoarders, we're going to have a bit of a harder time. But it just means they're going to make more informed, reactive, squad-building decisions. Yeah. And then underneath that, they have hidden arguably the most important feature that's been announced in Football Manager 24. Variations to player development. It's like I'm developing these pecs, bro. Oh, I think I pulled something. Now that's a big paragraph, but essentially if a player has high potential ability, they're going to be given more opportunities to help fulfill that potential ability than they were previously by AI managers. But then they get to the good stuff, hidden innocuously in the middle of this blog. Elsewhere, we've also made a few tweaks to player development. Excuse me. You did what? Some will see an accelerated improvement in their teenage years before hitting their potential ceiling earlier on. Examples of this including and not limited to Jude Bellingham, Bukayo Saka, Pedri, me, before I hurt my knee. You should have seen me. Meanwhile, a new system has been introduced to recognize late developers. Come on, baby. Yes! We're just gonna go ahead and call this one the Jamie Vardy rule, although I'm assuming what they mean is that there can be more accelerated development past the age of 19, where we found previously that development in Football Manager in FM23, specifically up through the age of 18, was at a high rate, and then there was a constant slow rate of development from the age of 19 to the age of 26 when it shut off entirely, with the exception of agility and balance. I'm making the assumption that that's because you can always stand on a balance beam, even after the age of 25. Now that's it. It's just one paragraph, and they go right back into the other aspects of transfer. They gave this no press whatsoever, so I'm a little worried it's not super fleshed out, or that they don't know the full ramifications of it, so they didn't want to talk about it that much. But what it means is we're gonna need to team up with EBFM to test this son of a gun, because Lord knows, I can't. I suck at math. The next thing you need to know, your transfer budget can go into the red. Oh yeah, this is just gonna be pure pain. There's no fun here. You want fun? Go back to late blooming Wonder Kids. Go think of Jamie Vardy for a couple of minutes and then come back to here. Because if you go into the red, you'll receive an inbox item that informs you that you need to either sell players or transfer clauses in order to generate fresh income. Thankfully, they'll include examples of things that you could sell in order to balance your transfer budget. If you're unable to generate enough money within the agreed time period, that's right, they give you a time period to balance the budget, your board will take control of your budget and begin to sell your players, at which point I will be depositing my keyboard and monitor in the street. Thank goodness they will relinquish control back to you when either the cash has been raised or the transfer window has closed. They've also introduced a whole fleet of new FFP restrictions, from reducing your squad size to putting a restriction on your overall transfer spending to get you more FFP compliance. So it's not just missing out on European competition and like point penalties. They actually have other penalties involved in FFP. And there's another feature in here that I want to bring up because maybe only one of you will ever use this, but if you do, I want you to let me know in the comments or in like a DM or something, because as a club, if you go into administration and somehow you don't get fired, you can enter into a company voluntary agreement, a government bond that allows an insolvent company to pay off their creditors over a fixed period of time while they continue to operate. If you end up in that situation, why? This is a game. Have fun. You're in administration in a game, having fun. Are you an accountant? I just wanted you to know it was there. And if you didn't notice, there is this emphasis in the financial part of the game. So you now have more specific details in your general streams of income, your ticket revenues, and you have more detailed breakdowns of the TV contracts, their length, and how much they've risen over time. That one's for the nerds. You gotta consider the possibility that we're all nerds here. But that was it for the first announcement. They just like sprinkled in the fact that development was gonna be different, and then put a much bigger emphasis on the fact that if you're in administration, you can get a government bond. Checks out. The second announcement also had to do with transfers, but from a completely different perspective. Your perspective. Because in their desperate race at Football Manager to create an authentic feeling transfer market, they have attempted to replicate the chaos of the modern transfer market by introducing something called the intermediary. Now after this, they include my favorite line in any announcement they've had so far, because this is just so backhanded. It's so transparently, hilariously backhanded, designed to insult you and me to the point that I think it is hilarious, where they're like, we've heard your feedback in recent years that selling players can prove a frustrating experience, as it often is for many clubs and players during every transfer window. You stupid idiots. This is what it's like for real clubs, but we'll fix it anyway because you complained about it. I just love it. I mean, why go for the backhanded slap there? But you know, if you're gonna go for it, stick the landing. They stuck the landing there. They're telling me where I can put it, but as long as they're making it easier to sell players, I'll take the insults. With that in mind, our team considered what extra tools there could be, and that is where the intermediaries come in. Well, not quite yet, because there's one other step you take before you get to an intermediary, and that's talking to the agent. Now, agents have been around since FM22, and you can do wonderful things when a player's on another team, like ask the agent how much that player is going to ask for. Or if a player's on your team, you can ask the agent how much they're going to ask for. But now you can ask the agent if they're interested in a move. And you can discuss the market interest in that player. That's what the button says. And when you click on discuss market interest, you can come on super strong to the agent, desperate, demonstrate a real urgency for moving the player. You can be keen, which isn't a word we really use in the United States, so that's just some Britishism shining through. And then there's the curious, where you're just exploring your options. I'm just a little curious. Would you be interested in a move? Now, if they're happy to move, the agent will let you know the player's current market value and clubs that are most interested in that player's services. But obviously in Football Manager, that will not always be the case. Players are not always happy to move, or the agents don't want them to move. And in this case, you may need to go over their head. Or perhaps the agent is unable to drum up any interest, in which case you need to go to another person, the intermediary. An intermediary is a dark, mysterious type. Someone who can make deals in the toughest of circumstances against the toughest opponents. And when those deals can't be made, When Italian hand signals don't work, they can find new partners, strike new deals. Out with the old, in with the new, saving you from certain financial embarrassment while charging you money in the process. Now, what are the intermediaries? Well, they are brokers recruited by your director of football, and they help generate interest and help you secure a final move for a player for a percentage of the fee. Now, I know what you're thinking. There's going to be no like 50%. Apparently, the legal limit to this is 10%. So the best intermediaries are going to just chunk 10% of the transfer fee, which, how do I get that job? Like, you're the intermediary for one Manchester United purchase and you can retire. Now, different intermediaries have different skill sets. The higher the ability and the reach of the intermediary, the more interest from different types of clubs they're able to garner. Their level of skill also determines the amount of time it takes them to line up the offers. So if it's deadline day, you gotta go with the best intermediary because that's the only way you're gonna get them out the door. At least that's the impression that they give. Some lower ability intermediaries may be entirely unable to complete their work. Well, that would suck. Now, they point out after getting you all hot and bothered about intermediaries that going over an agent and player's head to get an intermediary can unsurprisingly anger the agent and player, but you just gotta live with that if you can find a good intermediary that can find a good team and get rid of them. This is what the page for intermediaries looks like. It's not exactly full of information, and we don't know if you can hover over them to learn more, but it seems pretty straightforward. I don't know. They give you a projected price they think they can get for the player, which is cool. And something that's a big emphasis for them in the transfer market this year is more transparency. So if the intermediary doesn't get an offer from a team it thinks is interested, it will provide you reasons why. It will have logic as to why a player's not getting offered instead of relying on somebody like me to tell you that that team's not interested because the player's not interested in going there most of the time, which I've been doing for a lot of years now. So it's nice that the game will tell you that instead. Now, even if the intermediary comes back and hasn't found an offer, you're still not out of options. You can press the nuclear button and offer them out on an ultimatum to every intermediary. Now, the downside to this is it's first come, first served. So offers will start flying in or trickling in, or maybe just one will appear, and you basically have to take it or leave it because it's kind of like a bounty system almost. You've opened it up to every intermediary in the game. Now, if no intermediaries can source an offer in a month, then the ultimatum ends, and then you're where we found ourselves so often in FM23, screwed and stuck with the player. And in case you were wondering, yes, intermediaries can work for AI clubs too. They will approach you attempting to sell players. I imagine that'll be similar to the way agents approach you to sell their players in past FMs. We are gathered here today in somber remembrance of the offer to clubs button. How many times you saved me from myself. That's right, the offer to clubs button is gone. Because the whole intermediary talking to agents thing, that is just a part of the changes to transferring players. See, instead of offering to clubs, you basically put the player on something called Transfer Room, which is used by real-life clubs to essentially list their players and make them available to other clubs in some sort of searchable database. Now, I tried on stream to sign up for Transfer Room for a live demo, but I have to be reviewed, and I have to imagine I'm probably not gonna pass the review because I signed up as a YouTuber, because I wasn't thinking. So no live demo of Transfer Room in real life, but instead of offer to clubs, you'll be posting the player to Transfer Room in Football Manager. Now, unfortunately, unlike offer to clubs, this is not going to be an instant system. It says that. And the reason is the clubs won't all be online looking at the system every minute of every day. Now, that is a level of realism I don't know if I needed. I mean, they even boil it down to clubs are more likely to be using it at different points in the season and transfer window, so responses may come in more quickly at some times than others. Which means if you're offering them out in October, it sounds like nobody's going to be checking Transfer Room until, Santa Claus is the one checking Transfer Room for everybody. But they mentioned this is just the start of Transfer Room's integration, so I imagine with the move to Unity and FM25, Transfer Room's going to get a lot more detailed and interesting too. This is my favorite thing Football Manager does. They will write an entire section about the fact that they redesigned a bit of UI and renamed stuff. And there's one paragraph for the fact that the development changed. Like, literally, interest is classed having active interest or rumored interest instead of major or minor interest on the transfer page. And also on the transfer status screen, all of the options we've already talked about are also just presented there. That's this whole section. But overall, this stuff is cool, and a streamlining of, in my opinion, the clunkiest part of Football Manager 23, which was the transfers, which requires an overhaul. Now, they haven't mentioned the Saudi Arabian piggy bank that I'm sure is going to make Football Manager 24 interesting to say the least, but I am okay with these changes and definitely excited to get to testing those late developing, late blooming wonder kids out there. I'm coming for you, Jamie Vardy. All I gotta do is look for some guy playing in the 4th Division of England, drinking a Monster, wearing washed out jeans. So all of them. I'm looking for all of them. Now, there should be more features coming out right when this video comes out, so this video will be part of a series, so make sure to subscribe and hang on to your britches for more incredible features, content. Now, here is a video of me laughing at Football Manager memes. Worth your time. Much less serious than a features video. We've clearly been taking this very seriously the whole time. That's why I wore my best suit and tie. Dang it, forgot it.